Welcome back, folks. What have we got for you today? Well, today we're going to be dispelling some fear, some mistruths that have been parroted throughout history. These are ideas and words that have been maliciously given a negative connotation to intentionally turn us away from them. Okay? We've spoken about this previously in the inverse world, why many things that are good have been given this negative connotation, so we stay away from them. Because if we achieve these, if we understand them properly, we see the truth within it, we become too powerful for this small group of ventriloquists ruling our world to manage anymore, okay? So let's nut this one out. We're going to be talking about the Antichrist, Saturn, Satan, and open contact, meaning non-human intelligences, aliens, their agenda, all this sort of stuff, and we're going to be taking a nuanced approach, all right? Now, the fear-mongering, I've spoken about this before, something like, what is political correctness? It's being told how to feel about a certain thing. And these words like Satan, like Lucifer, like Apollo, like Antichrist, like Baphomet, right? We'll nut these ones out, okay? So what is the Antichrist? I spoke about in one of my earliest episodes, the Jesus as Santa Claus episode, actually. What is a Christ? Well, we are all a Christ. A Christos means an anointed one, and it's an actual biological mechanism. There's a physiological experience which anoints us, which turns us into a Christ, a Buddha, whatever you want to call it. The enlightenment, the ego death, the gnosis, right? So, Antichrist one is very simple. Until you are a Christ, you're an Antichrist. That doesn't mean you are some external devil that is it's not like that. Like Satan, Saturn, right? And I'll get onto this in the next slide, but Satan is not some South Park-esque caricature in red with horns and what have you, right? Lucifer, Apollo, these two are the light bearers. This is the sun's light entering. So, the idea of Apollo and Lucifer is a Christ, okay? It is no different. It is not something external to you. It is not a devil that is coming to harm you. No. The devil, the Antichrist, is just the worst aspect of yourself, which we all need to recognize. It is a villain. We are our own worst enemy, okay? Baphomet, another famous one. I should have put a photo in here just to kind of break it down. But if anyone looks up Baphomet, that is Baphomet, it is a horned androgynous goat doing this, right? What does it represent? Well, the word Baphomet itself is a cipher, a Knights Templar cipher, which when deciphered is the word Sophia, okay? Now, Sophia, often correlated with the Virgin Mary, Aphrodite, Venus, Isis, all these archetypal Mother of Heaven spirits, literally means wisdom, okay? That is why philosopher, philo, love, Sophia is wisdom. So, Baphomet literally means wisdom. Well, why is it an androgynous sort of weird thing? We spoke in the bicameral mind episode. This is the metaphysical hermaphrodite, the marriage of Hermes, the left, the masculine, and the right, Aphrodite, coming together, being synchronized. That is what the androgynous hermaphrodite represents symbolically, okay? And its horns, it's an idea stemming from Aries, when the sun was in the constellation of Aries, which is the ram, okay? So, moving on, there is nothing to be feared of any of these words or these ideas, okay? They all exist within us. Remember, using a non-dual philosophy, if we are all that is, anything else is just an aspect of ourselves. These are aspects of ourselves that we choose to reject, fail to recognize, or just don't understand yet, okay? So there's nothing to fear. It is all in here, all right? Satan. Saturnian thinking, right? Saturn, is the highest heaven. It is the crown chakra. There are 7 chakras. It is the crown chakra. It is Chronos. This is where we get the word chronology for time. Okay, it is Father Time, it is the Grim Reaper, because time devours all. But Saturnian thinking, which was revered in ancient times, is a state of being in which you're thinking from the crown chakra. You know, you have your third eye and then the crown. This is the highest, most virtuous state of being. This is the heaven on earth when you're thinking from a Saturnian standpoint. Now, what it represents is truth, first and foremost, but also revelry. Fun. Okay, why do we go out and get lit up on a Saturday night? Because Saturn rules Saturday, okay? Now, we get gaslit into thinking that all these fun sort of things are bad. I mean, you look at these satanic cults. Again, this is the inversion. David Icke, I love his work, but he goes on about claiming that these ruling elites, these occultists, are satanic cults. That is exactly what they want, because it attaches a connotation of fear to what they're doing, so it will turn you away from that idea. They aren't Saturnian thinkers. They couldn't be anything but. They are fear-based thinkers. Saturn is love, all right? Now, I touched on an earlier episode, the Black Magic episode. Why is this all coming out now? Well, we've spoken previously about the astrotheologian aspect of the Bible, astrology, all these things, and we've recently the sun has moved from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. Now, what planet rules Aquarius? That would be Saturn. That is why we're experiencing this disclosure. That is why we are experiencing this unveiling, the apocalypse. Apocalypse literally means unveiling. It means disclosure. And that is why the world's really weird at the moment. All this stuff is just flooding our brains. All this crazy information, aliens, this, that, and the other. The true nature of things, aspects of reality, intradimensions, all this crazy stuff. It's all coming out now. Why? Because Saturn rules Aquarius, and that is the archetypal frequency. That is the power of Saturn ruling the sun in Aquarius. Okay? The inversion now inverting. This is funny, right? So, typically, things like astrology, like I just mentioned, the occult, esoterica, the tarot, all these sort of things, they have been, and New Age spirituality, consciousness-based, unity consciousness, this is all being labeled woo-woo. This is why I'm woo-moo. Now, it's all being labeled pseudoscience, right? Because, the reductionist material scientists among us were so attached, which is a great word for it because we get attached from the root chakra to materialism, they've been attached to Einsteinian thinking, relativity. Quantum mechanics has demonstrably proved this false. Quantum entanglement is the idea that everything is connected. Now, unless you are all that is, how can you connect to all that is? You can't. So this is basically scientifically proving, the pseudoscience now becoming science and the science now becoming the pseudoscience, that we are all connected. We are all one. We are all aspects of the unity consciousness, the primary energy, God, source, nature, whatever you want to call it. All right? So this is a very wonderful development, not only in the world of science, but for our own sociology, our own psychology, for our own state of being. It is a far more positive, wonderful lens to see the world through. And not only that, quantum mechanics is spooky. Quantum entanglement, again, I'll quote, Einstein used to label as spooky action at a distance. This is magic. These are miracles. Because life is a miracle. And it does get spooky. But it isn't a bad thing. In fact, that is how magic happens. Do we all want a bit of magic in our lives? Well, of course I do. Don't you? Anyway. Open contact. Now, whether you believe the Anunnaki law, or the grey aliens, or the Orion group, or reptilians, or whatever it is, whether you believe in this or not, to dismiss the idea that there aren't extraterrestrials, or dismiss the idea that there are extraterrestrials, is pretty ridiculous. Look at the size of the cosmos. Life outside of Earth exists. The only reason you would you wouldn't think it does, is because your ego thinks you are the apex of the whole world, right? Shock horror, we ain't, right? Now, why hasn't open contact happened? I mean, for many people it has. You hear of many abduction stories and all this sort of stuff. But why it hasn't happened is the primary objective. Is that what Stargate called it? I haven't watched it. But the idea is that we, as a hybridized species, need to evolve consciously, spiritually, attain a certain level of maturity as a species in order to be welcomed into the cosmic brotherhood. And these people, these non-human intelligences, have been waiting for this very patiently. In essence, we just need to take accountability for our own shit. We need to elevate ourselves consciously as a species before we can be trusted with the rest of the cosmos. And I'll touch on this in a later slide. Now, good, bad, benevolent, malevolent. For us to think we know what is best for everything, okay? Understanding we are the cosmos experiencing itself. We are part of the whole, okay? Now, who are we to say we, in our somewhat limited, immature manner of thinking, knows what's best for the whole? If we are destroying the earth, if we are polluting it beyond repair, if we are blowing it up with nuclear weapons, if we are ripping holes in the fabric of space-time at whatever the fuck CERN is doing, can you blame a benevolent species ridding us like mosquitoes in order to save the earth? I mean, this is the nuance that's required. We can't take into account the greater good if we aren't thinking on that cosmic scale. You know, when you act from a self-centered standpoint, self-serving as opposed to service to others, you're completely blind to what is best for the world, right? Because all you're worried about is yourself. You're not thinking outside of your root lower chakras. You are thinking solely about yourself, and what is best for you isn't necessarily what's best for the world, especially in your ill-intended activities or your ill-intended ways of thinking, right? So you hear of, a section of greys coming to harvest DNA and do all this, and, it may be a traumatic experience, but you can't fully understand what the agenda is on a greater good, right? I mean, look at how we treat animals. The crimes against nature are despicable, and yet here we are, these people came and did this to us. Well, look at what we're doing to a lower species to us, right? We need to put things into context. This is the nuance, okay? And just quickly, things like the Anunnaki, okay? I'll just quickly touch on this law. The idea is that these divine beings came from the skies, the stars, and they hybridized us with an existing hominid population to create a workforce to help them harvest gold or mine gold. In exchange for this, though, they also taught us agriculture. They gave us wisdom. They gave us astrology. They gave us mathematics. They gave us society and civilization. I'd call that a value exchange, right? Is that a necessary evil for a greater good? Maybe it is, okay? I don't know, and that's the idea. If we all took the approach that maybe we don't know what's best, because how could we? We are babies of the cosmos. The world would probably be a far more relaxed, open-minded society. What is open-minded? It's open to being wrong. You ask any person on the street, are you open-minded? 99.9% of people will say, yeah, of course I am. And then you provide them one inconvenient truth, and they'll reject it immediately. And that is the level of our maturity. That is why we are the baby of the cosmos. We are a relatively new species in a relatively new solar system on a relatively new planet, relatively speaking to all that is, okay? So keep things in context, right? I mentioned earlier about nuclear arms and CERN doing all this crazy shit, not even knowing what they're doing. They're just like, yeah, we'll give this a try. We can't understand what, at a quantum level, this is doing to cross-dimensionalities, right? It is so ignorant and gross that look, our armies I mean, the US Army has openly admitted to shooting down UAP with direct energy weapons. Who's the scary one, right? Think about this. To just assume ill intent is a direct reflection of your own ill intent. You know, you're thinking what you would do. Well, yeah, if you'd shoot them out of the sky, you're going to think they're going to come shoot you out of the sky. But they're thinking from up here, and you're thinking from right down here. Context, folks. Keep it relative. Anyway. Woo-moo. Woo-way.